Well, greetings, visitors to the paper prison. Once more it is I, your host, the Comics Prisoner, sentenced for crimes against comics illustration to be forever imprisoned within beautiful pieces of comic art and to sing its praises. Welcome back. So let's get started. As I've said in the past, comics is an art form made up of many art forms, and one of those art forms is writing. Now, I don't think comics writers get enough love out there, and I'm sure you're probably saying they don't get a lot of love here. Fair enough. Look, we've got a lot of people to cover, and we're going to get to them all by the time I'm 90, okay? Now, to get started, I've said that for young people of a certain age, comics worked as a soft intro into literature. For a lot of us growing up in the 60s and 70s, the bookish ones, the ones that valued literature, the arts, the outsiders, and those of us growing up in the South, comics was our refuge. And the men and women who created these books were almost our surrogate fathers, or at least surrogate guardians. I know a lot of people felt that way about Stan. He was the cool uncle, the one who knew what you were talking about even if he himself didn't indulge in it. He was the live and let live relative. However, I came up a little too late to have Stan's work have that kind of effect on my formative years, aside from the fact that his DNA was in everything at Marvel. No, that task would lie with writer Steve Gerber. Now, before we get started, I want to say this isn't going to be a biopic. I have not done research into Steve's early years or where he studied or his career after Marvel. It's not that kind of show. What this show is about is how his work affected me as a young person growing up. It's more about my experiences than his, but I think this still works. Again, before we get started, Stan's influence was everywhere in 70s Marvel. It could be argued that anyone who worked at Marvel then was doing their best Stan Lee impersonation, if for no other reason so they could get hired. But Gerber was an original, and he spoke to me. Yes, Stan's parables were timeless, but Gerber's were current. He was about things that were happening in the world right now. It spoke to my sense of justice and, in fact, helped shape it. Stan's stories were morality tales, easily digested, and will live on for generations. But Gerber's were raw, sometimes uncomfortable. He had something to say, and I don't know if I would have heard it if I didn't encounter it in comics. The early Gerber was about shining a light on injustice, especially those injustices that happen to children and the disenfranchised, the poor. Mid-Gerber, I think, was him addressing the problem of mental illness without actually declaring it, that was what he was doing. And I think Comics End Gerber was about the absurdity of life, probably because his own life and career had become kind of absurd to him at that point. And I loved it all. I miss Gerber when he left Marvel, largely due to the Howard the Duck kerfuffle, but I think it would have happened regardless. Steve was too big for comics, and he had to break out at some point, and so he did. Funny, we discuss a lot about how to break into comics, but we don't talk almost at all about breaking out of it. And as much of a maverick as I'm painting Steve, I was surprised how much of a team player he could be within the comics format. Yes, his stories were often weird, but not incomprehensible. Both young and old could get, i.e. enjoy, a Steve Gerber comic book. And he was aware that no matter how bizarre he got, it had to be buttoned with a good old-fashioned fist fight, which Gerber was more than capable of serving up. When it came to the fist fights, it was no different than any other writer. He understood where he was working, and he made the best of it, until he couldn't. Now, as with Stan, I think it's best to just let Steve's work speak for himself. So today I find myself confined into a beautiful page from Man-Thing number 17, I believe it's page 30. And it's been a bit of a shocking reveal for me because getting ready for this show, I haven't read this book in 40 years. And I was amazed on how it could be written today. So before any more commentary, let's just read it. Now, we're in the middle of a story where certain inflexible people of the town council in a small fictional town called Citrusville, Florida, is basically ramping up to do a book burning. And we are in the middle of this council. We're going to start up with the lady who's pushing this, and kind of a backwards Archie Bunker of the South guy dressed up as a Viking, setting up the tragedy to come. So basically they're talking about not having certain books in the library. And this lady goes, "Now the question is, what are we going to do? Will we allow this filth to remain in our schools?" And the caption says, "As one, the assemblage cries, no." Then the Viking says, "Do with it what the slime beast did to my hands. Burn the filth, so it can't touch their minds like my fingers can't grab anything anymore." The Viking's suggestion becomes a chant. "Burn the filth." Someone tosses a cigarette lighter onto the stage. And our proxy for the audience, Richard Rory, says, "Oh no, she wouldn't." In another scene, we see how the captured man-thing is being destroyed in a chemical vat, this mirroring the destruction of the book. And sadly, this act is met with thunderous applause. So Rory, the hippie, the young one, the intellectual, he starts running out. "This is going to cost me my job, but..." And we see another shot of Man-Thing still being eaten up by the acidic vat. And he knocks the book out of Rory knocks the book out of the woman's hand and says, "You can't do this. You're acting like a bunch of Nazis." And one last look at Man-Thing as he goes under for the last time. And that's it. I think that speaks for itself. Like I said, I am shocked at how things have not changed. Here we are 45 years later, and we're still having these kinds of discussion and these kind of feelings and fears and embrace of ignorance. And Steve Gerber has left us, he's died, but I'm wondering, what would he have thought now if he had read this page with what's going on even today? Like I said, I'm really sorry that there isn't tales like this available because the distribution method is broken. Young people cannot be exposed to considered and well thought out narratives that teach one to think twice and act once. I'm really glad I got to read a lot of Gerber's output back then. And I hope you do too. So like I said, or have said in the past, what if you wish to read some of these for yourself if you haven't already? Well, thankfully, there's a lot of collected editions of Steve Gerber's work. Everything from Man-Thing to Defenders to Howard the Duck, Marvel 2-in-1, which I almost would have picked a page from that series because it was heavy. So, as ever, I always suggest first going to your local comic shop and asking for their help in finding some of the works of Steve Gerber from either this era or later eras. Then there's always Amazon or your Google. I always suggest going to the essentials because I love seeing this stuff in the original black and white. And I really can't go on without speaking as to the, rather praising the work of Jim Mooney illustrating this tale, I believe both pencils and inks. Honestly, I cannot think of a better person to have recorded this tale for Mr. Gerber. Again, one of those things where the right talents came together to tell a story clearly told and impactful. Well, I think I'm going to leave it here, as I've said before. The warden is telling me visiting hours is up, and I'm going to be moved either to solitary or to another page. And I hope you'll come back. I hope you'll, if you like what you see, I hope you'll subscribe, hit like, smash the bell, tell your friends. And please make comments in the comments section or on the Facebook fan page. So until next time, please remember, 4 walls do not a prison make, but comics can be a very cool prison. Take care.